going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 200 of the Club and Sub Podcast, number 200. And if you guys like the show, drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And for episode 200, we brought together back someone who was there all the way back at episode number 1, and who I think was with us all the way through about episode number 120 or so, thereabouts. We got our boy Luke, Spar with Reality MMA. Luke, how you doing, homie? Good to have you back.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to it. We actually got to meet up for the first time a few weeks back at the Apex card, so that was nice getting to meet everybody. And yeah, happy to be back, just like the good old days.
Oh yeah. Hopefully we can win some money like the good old days, because the last couple of weeks have been pretty fucking rough for me, to be honest with you. Last week was just the ultimate. I'm not even going to get into it. It was just a shit show. But yeah, we got UFC 309. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Lags, what do you think of the card?
Pretty decent card. I mean, obviously there's a lot of star-studded names on the main card. We have obviously Penn State's own Bo Nickel. Pretty good card though, all around.
Luke, how about you? Any thoughts?
Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like from like a pay-per-view perspective, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of good like fun matchups or whatever, but it's not like, you know, UFC 300 where I'm like, you know, salivating at the card or anything. I'm also just like not a Stipe Miocic guy. Like he's just never piqued my interest at all. I don't know. The guy's bland and boring.
Okay.
I don't.
All right.
Are you not a puppy guy also?
What's that?
I said, are you not a puppy guy also? Do you not like puppies? Ice cream? Puppies.
We'll see how she goes.
But yeah, no, it's not great. I mean, it's literally 25, 30 minutes from my house, depending on traffic, and I'm not going. It's basically getting like premium pay-per-view pricing for a card that is headlined by two old men and a fight that happened a couple years ago with another old man who hasn't fought in 3 years. It's not going to do it for me. I'm actually going to be in the city Saturday too with my wife, and like it's one of those cards where I was telling her, I'm like, I'd like to get back to watch the card, but if I end up getting a little bit too drunk and I don't end up watching the card, I wouldn't really lose that much sleep over it either. But it is a pay-per-view. It's episode 200, so let's just jump right into it here. First fight of the night, I'll kick it to our boy, Luke. What do you think? We got Veronica Hardy. She's taking on Eduarda Moura. Current price, Hardy minus 140. Come back on Moura plus 120.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the trickier fights on the card, honestly, for me to call, where I went a little back and forth with it. Just because I think our sample of Moura is kind of weird. Like, there's still a lot I think we don't know about her. And at the same, like, I bet Gomes is a dog against her last time out. But once again, kind of another weird fight. She shot 26 takedowns, gassed out. Obviously, Gomes counter wrestled pretty well. But, like, I don't know. I feel like she's getting a little bit of a bad rap for that fight. I mean, Gomes is not an easy girl to fight. And I do think her going up to 125 is probably a good move for her. She was a really big 115, so not having to cut that weight, I think, is decent. And I don't know, it's difficult for me to ignore like all the bottom issues that Veronica Hardy has had in the past, and not only in her previous run, but like recently as well. Like she didn't get off the bottom against Horth, I think, at the end of the second round. JJ got on top of her late. So I don't know. I'm still pretty skeptical about her as like a bottom commodity. She has like good jiu-jitsu and stuff, but I don't know. I kind of like the Moura chick as like a Haas type, but like I said, she's still really unproven as like a striking commodity. And Hardy kind of plays her game well. Like she's not super high output, but she's not like absorbing strikes at any super high rate either. She's always been really good in round one. You know, she's fighting good game plans with, you know, homeboy Dan now. So yeah, it's like, I kind of feel like she probably wins round one here. But she's just looked bad in round three. So it seems almost like kind of like a pivot point round two type of fight where 29-28 type of decision in all likelihood. I think I ended up picking Hardy to win, just, you know, a little bit more battle tested, more pro experience. But honestly, I don't feel great about it. And just from a pure market perspective, you know, she went from being big dog, mid dog, short dog. Now she's short favorite. So just kind of on that pretense, like it feels like you are buying a little bit high on Hardy here, potentially pure market wise, but I don't know. I'm fine to leave this one alone. Maybe just look to live bet it.
Yeah, so it's funny because what you just said about the market is kind of like was my initial thoughts before this, because something I've noticed in the last year or two, and honestly, if you go back even longer than that, one of the like most consistent market edges you'll find is fighters who are overhyped into a debut or their second fight who lose a pretty ugly performance, and then suddenly the general market consensus goes from being really good undefeated fighter to they're a total fraud, and the market swings way too far the other way. So like coming into tape, I was like, man, I mean, Moura was literally just undefeated and like almost minus 200 against Diniz Gomes. Like this is an overreaction. But honestly, after taping it, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into it like you just did, Luke. I don't feel strongly about it. I do think the problem for me is like most of Hardy's grappling tape, aside from Juliana Miller, is 3, 4, 5 years ago when she was obviously considerably younger. And I mean, it's very evident if you look at her hiatus and then the Miller fight and everything since to before that she's obviously made fairly considerable improvements to her game. So I don't even know how much to put in that. Like if it turns out her bottom game is just like it was against Andrea Lee or Ashley Evans Smith back in the day, she's probably going to get owned here. But I also feel like it's much more likely than not that that's not the case. And I do think Hardy has like sneaky physicality for a 125-pound chick, and Moura moving up in weight against a bouncy outfighter who actually can kind of compete physically in the clinch, I don't really think is ideal for her. But with that said, I do still think there's this big question about what is Hardy going to look like if she gets taken down by a pretty high-level jiu-jitsu player who's, even though she's up a weight, is still going to be pretty big for the division. And I don't really know. So, I mean, I'm kind of happy to pass. I think siding with the Hardy side as a favorite makes sense, just since I think there's more known knowns than what we have about Moura. But what do you think, Legs?
I honestly side more here with Luke. Like I'm passing here just because, I mean, kind of some of the points that he did touch on. I do think Hardy probably wins round one at a high clip here. I do think, though, that Moura can land takedowns here. I think her moving up in weight class is huge for her. I do think she's obviously the much more physical girl here. I think she can land takedowns. I think it's probably just a close fight, but I do think the footwork and speed of Hardy can give her issues.
Yeah, and before we move to the next one, guys, just real quick, I kept an abbreviated opening today since we have Luke, 3-man crew, but John Kelly's crew going live after ours at 8:45. They also sponsor the Club and Sub podcast. Use the promo code CLUB for 30% off on your first month subscription there. It's a great show. It's a great product. They got the live odds screen. They got John's own DFS projections. They got the trends tool, and they got bets, not pets, from Pepe and Ozzy. It's well worth the price of admission. So check it out. Promo code CLUB, CLUB. Now, moving on. Second fight of the night. This one, it's a fun one, and I think there are a lot of takes all over the map on it. We got Oban Elliott taking on Bassil Hafez. Current price, Elliott -2. Wow, holy shit. -280. The comeback on Hafez +240. What do you think here, Lags?
I mean, the line definitely blew out. I wasn't expecting, obviously, you to say -280. We were just talking about it being -230 a couple days ago. I do kind of think the steam is justified, though. Like, Hafez, to me, just kind of seems like a brute on the feet. His just very winging hooks. Striking's not super clean. I think Elliott's a much cleaner striker of the two. And I don't think Hafez is like going to get a ton of meaningful grappling here. So I think Elliott should be fine personally.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of on an island with this one this week. I did pick Elliott to win. I do think he is the deserved favorite, but I don't agree with this team like at all. I actually feel like this should be a lot more competitively lined of a fight. Obviously, Elliott's like the more technical guy on the feet. He's shown better cardio. Like, I get it. I think for those reasons, making him a favorite makes sense. But like, I think a guy in Hafez, though, he's just like a hoss. Like, you know, he's going to sit down on his punches. Like, despite not having a lot of conventional knockouts, I think the guy does actually hit pretty hard. He's very physically strong at the weight class, solid blast doubles. He can take the back. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and it's just hard for me to unsee Oban Elliott nearly getting decapitated by two bad fighters in Val Woodburn and the dude that he fought on the Contender Series. That Kike Brito guy actually is, I wouldn't say he's bad per se, but nothing special and probably not UFC level. I just think that kind of like dancey stick and move type of game, kind of lean back type of thing that Elliott does. Like, I think Hafez could hurt him really bad. And I think it's the law of large numbers with a guy like him that somebody's going to put him down. And even just like going back to Elliott's like days in Cage Warriors and whatnot, like the guys he's out grappling and stuff, I don't really rate at all. And my last, I guess, kind of more narrative point with Hafez now being out in Colorado for a while, you know, with Whitman, Usman, Gaethje, Archie Colgan, like he got out of the East Coast. He's actually at a real camp training at Elevation full time now. So I have a little bit more optimism that his cardio is going to improve. I still think he has that, you know, brute type of, you know, a bit of a red line approach to his game where I don't think the guy's ever going to be Lance Armstrong, but I'm actually anticipating some cardio improvements. I thought it looked a little bit better in his last fight against McGhee too. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me that like everybody and their mom was betting Preston Parsons last time out and steaming him and saying like Elliott's like a bum. And then obviously Hafez underperformed as a big favorite against Gall. So I just think there's a lot of ipso facto here. Like if people took early stuff on Elliott, I get it. But like people laying like over 2-1 on him now and steaming him, I could look like a complete idiot here. And maybe I'm just like looking into the matchup too much and trying to get too cute with it. But I think Hafez, just from a macro perspective, like he's a good dog. Like I'm not trying to lay like turbo juice with a guy like him, but like I said, I think he's got most of the finishing upside in this fight. Personally, I think he can take Oban Elliott down. I think he actually probably has better jiu-jitsu in the matchup as well. It's just, you know, can he get inside and not, you know, completely death gas here? But especially at a number like plus 240, you know, I'm probably going to actually have a couple units on Hafez here. I think the steam's wrong, but we'll see.
Sheesh, Luke throwing some fucking shade at the East Coast there, man. That was rough. Really went out our homeland there. But no, I'm kidding. I actually I took the early like Elliott numbers. I think my average is minus 150 or thereabouts. But I think this line's fucking crazy, to be honest. Like I capped him at like minus 180, minus 185, and I have him pretty small. My general thinking about the fight is I don't think Bassil I think Bassil can get takedowns just off sheer horsepower. I do not think controlling Oban will be really all that easy, especially while they're fresh. And I kind of think the deeper it goes, like Oban will get tired, but Bassil will probably tire quicker. And on the feet, I think Oban is just as much better footwork and is much better at just, you know, staying mobile and staying defensively sound, whereas Bassil kind of poor footwork and likes to kind of just sit down and throw. And I think that kind of style is kind of tough with Oban. Having said that, though, at the current price, I mean, there is so much downside on the Oban side here. It's like insane at this price. I don't really think there's much chance that Oban is going to come out here and top time Bassil. I don't think he's all that likely to finish Bassil either, like even on the feet, to be completely honest. And I do think, you know, to Luke's point, we've seen Oban Elliott knocked out before. We've seen him hurt before. And I do think, even though I think in terms of like technical fundamental striking and footwork, there's a pretty large edge for Elliott here. I mean, it wouldn't be that shocking for Bassil to hurt him bad or knock him out, or just even land like 2 to 3 really hard shots around that like swing the fight. Like, I'm not saying I think it's pick, but at minus 280, I think all the upside is on the Hafez side. So, yeah, I mean, I have some early Oban. I might even just like cash out of it now with the CLV that's there. But
that's what I was going to ask. Are you going to keep it or?
I don't feel strong about it, honestly. I literally was like looking at it and I'm like, yeah, you know, we should be a bit wider, but I might not keep it. I honestly, because like this is like so stupid. Like I could literally just free roll the entire thing for relatively cheap. So. Yeah, I don't know. I probably will not keep the entire thing.
Well, the last thing I'll say too, John, I mean, like, Elliott's obviously most void in the first round anyway. So it's like, if you're even someone that's on the more on the Elliott side, like not in terms of if you got like down early on him, but like, why would you lay minus 280 on him pre and not just bet him live? Like, I mean, Bassil, I mean, the best round, if Bassil has, one,
is going to be round one.
It's going to be the first round. And that's the most dangerous when Elliott's susceptible anyway. So just bet Elliott live at this point if you want to be on the Elliott side.
Or bet him by decision.
Yeah. I will say, too, I did bet Parsons against Oban, and like Oban did impress me there. But there is something to be said, though, for the fact that it's kind of like what I was just saying about the last fight, where it's like a lot of people bet Parsons, and I think we all thought Parsons was going to come out and out grapple him. And it's like, it's going to feel real fucking shit if you lay juice on Preston Parsons and then Hafez comes out here and gets like 7 or 8 minutes of top time. It's just going to be like, what am I doing? It's like the epitome of buy high solo. So yeah, I mean, I get it. I think at the current price, it's pretty easily Hafez here. Moving on though, third fight of the night. This one, I've seen a lot of opinions on it. I wouldn't say I have a super strong opinion, but I'm thinking about it, if the line keeps moving. We got Mickey Gall taking on Ramiz Brahimaj. Current price, Gall minus 138. Come back on Brahimaj plus 118. I kind of lean the Ramiz side here. If he gets out to like plus 125, plus 130, I'll probably play him small. I guess I understand why the price is where it is. Gall, we've just seen him in more UFC fights for many more extended minutes than what we've seen from Ramiz. And Ramiz has certainly seemed like the kind of guy I shouldn't even say has certainly seen. He is certainly a bad nail and performs best as a hammer. Like, there's no question about that. What I question, though, is just whether or not, like, Mickey Gall can turn him into a nail. I think most would argue Mickey Gall's last fight against Bassil was probably his best in the UFC. And I mean, I bet him there plus 300. But, I mean, we just talked about that fight, and I think we'd all agree Bassil's not a great striker. A lot of hardware, a lot of speed, a lot of power, but he's not really a very fundamental striker, and yet he out-volumed Gall, landed the way harder shots en route to a decision that was mostly standing. And so I think the idea that Gall is a better striker here, I mean, maybe he is, but I just look at Ramiz and I'm like, would Max Griffin have handled Mickey Gall any differently than he handled Ramiz? I don't really think so. Court McGhee, again, I don't really think so. Themba, I kind of think would do the same thing to him. So I mean, maybe Gall is a slightly better striker, but I think that's far from a given just because like Ramiz's sample, if you go to like his regional career, it's mostly him taking guys down and finish them in round one. UFC, it's like moderate tempo kickboxing match with Max Griffin where he kind of just gets classed. Not surprising. The McGhee fight where he just gets kind of cage pushed and physically abused for most of that fight. And the same thing happened with Themba. His other 2 fights are both takedowns and into insta subs. So I don't think there's a lot to draw from on the Ramiz side here. And it's like, if they're striking, I think it'll be competitive. I think Ramiz is a bit more durable and probably more likely to hurt Gall on the feet than vice versa. And honestly, in the grappling, I don't want to say I favor Ramiz, but I've seen a lot of tape of Mickey Gall. Last fight aside, to his credit, he tried to work up against Bassil, but a lot of tape of Mickey Gall being stuck and looking hopeless on bottom in the UFC, including against Randy Brown, including against Mike Perry. So I'm not really sold that it's like, oh, Mickey Gall's got this great get-up game, and if Ramiz takes him down, he'll be fine working back up and gassing Ramiz out. I just don't really buy that. I kind of think the price should be about pick, maybe even slight favor Ramiz, because I do think he's much more likely to finish this fight than Gall is. And I don't think Gall's a good enough fighter, nor has good enough cardio to really separate much here. So I lean Ramiz. I might bet him if it keeps moving. Lags, what do you think?
I actually think the line's about fine personally. Like I completely disagree on the striking personally. I think Gall is the better striker of the two. I think he can land the harder strikes. To me,
he might be.
Ramiz just doesn't throw much on the feet. In terms of the cardio, I think Gall's got better cardio, slightly, albeit. And yeah, I mean, obviously there's a concern with the defensive grappling of Gall, but in general, I just don't think Ramiz is a 15-minute fighter. I think Ramiz needs to find the early sub.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, a fight between like 2 massive like fades for me. So it's like one of those spots like, and I unfortunately, I ended up actually spending way too much time like looking into this fight, and I was just like, But I guess I actually lean more with lags here on the Gall. Honestly, when McGhee was -120, I highly considered it. And then I was like, stop, Luke. Just stop it.
I'm gonna be honest. Like Gall's a bad fighter, but to me at -135, I'm even still like slightly considering it.
Yeah, it's just one of these ones. I'm just like, if I put money on this and my read's wrong and it loses, I'm gonna want to hang myself. And it's just like, so like if McGhee was like plus or something, I think that would have been easier for me. But I mean, the analysis is like really within the margins because the overall tape on both guys is pretty tragic. I mean, we've been fading Ramiz, like Court McGhee at Pick'em was like generational wealth spot. Who was the other guy? Oh, Max Griffin was only like -170. That was a great bet. I think I've actually cashed on every Ramiz fight because the Michael Gilmore under 2.5 was like -140. It's just like, what the hell was that? And then like his round 1 sub against Platnikov was like 4-1. So I think I've actually done really, really well with Ramiz fights, but like, I don't know. I do think Mickey's actually the better striker here. Probably like, I don't know. At least recently, it looks like he's shown some improvements in evolution where Ramiz has just not really shown anything extended in terms of like winning exchanges. Mickey's obviously going to be the much longer guy. Mickey's defense sucks though. That's kind of the thing. And Mickey has technically been hurt more than Brahimaj has, but he's also faced better strikers. So I think that kind of needs to be noted, but the ultimate thing and why I'm staying off of Gall is because Ramiz is probably the better wrestler. And I think there's like some merit to Ramiz potentially just top timing Gall based on his history. Yeah. The thing is, Ramiz hasn't really shown he can do that extended at all either. But like the guys that have also like hossed Ramiz around on the ground, like Mickey Gall's not physical despite being a long guy. So it's like, I don't know. There's like a lot of weird dynamics within the fight where I'm not really confident. I lean Gall, but like if I sit there and I lay chalk on Mickey Gall and it's like, oh, the guy just sits there and plays guard, like he pretty much has throughout his entire career, and Ramiz just Big Brother's top time, like I'm gonna want to kill myself. But an interesting look I do have on the fight though, the over 1.5 is -150. I think that's really, it was a lot bigger and the whole market has bet this down and betting the under, but based on the dynamic of this fight, I think this fight actually GTDs at a decent clip. So -150, I haven't got involved yet, but I think I'm actually going to have a sizable position on that over.
That's like, if you think it should be, that over, I see over 2.5 at -150.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said 1.5. I was like, that's fucking wild.
Oh yeah, you said it. You said 1.5. You said 1.5.
I was like, that is insanity.
Yeah, I heard that too.
No, 2.5. But still, I know it's kind of sweaty with both guys are theoretically finishers, but in terms of how they match up, I don't think this fight actually finishes at much of a rate, to be honest.
Yeah, once he said 1.5, and then he said he liked GTD, I was like, oh my god, Luke's full sending in there, like 1.5 -150. That's great. That's great.
I'm Rocky in the. I don't do many of these anymore. I'm Rocky. You got to give me a break.
Luke's easing back into it. Well, I'm going to throw him another one to ease into this with here. We got Marcin Tybura taking on Jhonata Diniz. What are your thoughts, Luke? Especially with Marcin Tybura off of being a victim of a heavyweight armbar.
Well, I think we all got smoked on that one. I was on Tybura in that spot, and I was just like watching it. That was one of those ones like it's so ridiculous. You're not even mad about it. You just kind of like laugh at it. You're like, oh, okay. What the fuck? I mean, yeah, I don't think it's a very difficult fight to break down. Relatively binary matchup. I tend to lean to the grapplers in these type of fights. I don't feel passionate about it, but the thing with like Williams, I know a lot of people were like giving him like Diniz credit for like what he was like kind of able to stuff against Williams and like get back up or whatever. But people also have to remember Lucas Bresky got up 8 times under Carl Williams, and a bunch of regional bums have gotten up. Like he's a good entry in like volume wrestler, but he's never been like a dominant control wrestler. So I don't know. I guess I disagree with some people. I'm like, oh, Diniz didn't like actually look that bad in the wrestling exchanges with Williams. My thing is like Tybura has a much better top game than Austin Lane and has a much better top game than Carl Williams does, to where if he does get the fight to the ground, it's probably a round and maybe the fight, because obviously Tybura is a much better grappler. Obviously that sucks with him getting armbarred last time, so it makes you sound like kind of an idiot, but obviously the much better grappler here, where I think he's live to finish. But problem is still that Tybura is not a great offensive wrestler. I think he's only landing at 33%. He will stand and strike for large periods of his fights, and so that's kind of my real concern here. Tybura doesn't shoot takedowns 3 minutes into this fight and he just gets lumped or whatever, or he like gets a takedown, like let's say a minute and a half into round one, the round expires, round two starts back on the feet and he gets decapitated. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of ways that this could go wrong for Tybura. He's old, like, I don't know. I'm actually a bit surprised that the monies came towards Tybura. I thought the market would actually be betting Diniz, and that's where I was like, okay, well, if Tybura's a dog here, I might, just put my big boy pants on and watch him get decapitated for value purposes. But yeah, like I said, I'm kind of surprised how the market's moved towards him. So at this price, I don't have any interest. I just get bad vibes from the fight, to be honest.
Yeah, I honestly kind of lean to the Diniz side, and I am usually a bet Tybura always and often and heavy type of guy. And like I get the price, because I mean we all know, like you just said, Luke. I mean Tybura's got a way better top game than anything Diniz is seeing. If it turns out Marcin Tybura can get easy takedowns in this fight, he is going to dominate and likely finish, in my opinion. I'm just so skeptical that happens because, for one, to your point, Luke, it's almost the inverse of Carl Williams, where like Williams is really good at getting the fight to the mat. A lot of good entries, can chain takedowns. Tybura is really bad at getting it there. Once it's there, he is tremendous, but he's not a good wrestler. He's very, very slow, which is the thing that kind of scares me here. Like, he's slow, plotty, and the guy has no defense entering. I actually was impressed with how willing to eat damage he was to get inside against Tuivasa. So maybe that'll happen here and he'll get him down. But I don't know. It's been a concern with me for a while for Tybura. And there's a few fights that are, I don't want to compare Diniz to Volkov, but obviously Tybura shot 12 takedowns there, couldn't get Volkov down. You go to the Blagoy fight, and Tybura was kind of content to almost make an argument he was down 2 rounds against Blagoy, even though he ended up winning a decision before he was actually able to get that fight to the mat. I just don't think he's reliable to get takedowns when fighters are fresh, honestly. And there's a lengthy history showing that. Yeah, he got Ty down early, but Ty's like one of the worst defensive wrestlers in the division, if not like the worst.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what like this. And like I bet Tybura against Ty, but Diniz, I think he measures distance better than a guy like Ty does. I think he's got better footwork and is, really, really fast. And Tybura plotting forward, I don't know, man. It's almost, not to keep harkening back to Luke, but what he just said, where it's not that hard for me to imagine a fight where Tybura lands 2 to 3 takedowns, but eats a bunch of howitzers on the feet first and doesn't get takedowns till later in the round and ends up losing rounds on like big damage and or just gets bonked. Yes, if Tybura gets easy takedowns, he's huge value. I'm just not really sold they're going to come. Plus, he's 39 years old. I got to say, even though it probably doesn't mean much in the context of this fight, Tybura, a pretty high-level black belt, getting armbarred in the manner he did against Spivak, especially because when you rewatch it, Spivak was trying to set it up for about 30 seconds. It just makes me think his reactions are getting slower, and he's obviously not the fighter he once was. So I'd say maybe Tybura goes back to the well here and beats another striker, but like we've seen him struggle to take down bad wrestlers in the past, like Greg Hardy and Ben Rothwell absolutely ate him until they gassed out. Is it going to be real? Same with Walt Harris. Like, is it going to be? Yeah. It's like, is it going to be? And Diniz, for all of his issues in the grappling, I think has really good cardio for a heavyweight. It seems to anyway. So like, is it really going to be shocking if Tybura just really struggles to get him down and either gets knocked out or takes a beating? Like, I don't think so. I think, yeah, Tybura's got big upside if easy takedowns come. I'm just not sure we have a good reason to think takedowns are going to be easy. So I don't know if I'll bet him. I'd probably need like plus 150, honestly, but just because the grappling dynamic is what it is. But I do lean to the Diniz side at the number. What do you think, Lags?
I could only bet Tybura in this kind of a spot, but I'm fine passing it. I mean, to the points you guys have both mentioned. I mean, even in the Tuivasa fight, I mean, he got hurt got cut very early in that fight. And then, yes, like you mentioned, gets easy takedowns on Tuivasa, who's a horrible defensive grappler. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be easy for Tybura by any means.
Tybura is short notice too.
Yeah, this is like does it not reek of like I'm getting paid 150K a fight? I get to come in here, you know.
It's really just the vibes I get are just I was just like I'm probably good.
Yeah. It's like this is not like if they were at 145 pounds, I would bet Tybura just because the KO threat is a lot less severe. Like if it like all the times he bet Darren Elkins against guys who were theoretically had a chance to hurt him, but it's like
literally
they're like guys, but they're
Elkins.
like guys and KOs don't manifest that often. Like this is heavyweight. We have seen Tybura get hurt many times and get knocked out many times, you know. So we'll see. Moving on. This is awful. Legs, I'm going to spare you having to start with this. I'll start and say 5 words. We got Roberto Romero coming in on 2 days' notice against David Onama. Onama's minus 1,000. Comeback on Romero's plus 700. I did just enough tape to decide I have no interest in this fight. Onama is probably going to kill him. He's got a gassy cage pusher who's not very good. I have nothing else to say. I know Onama rolls, or I think Onama rolls. If you guys want to expound on that, you're welcome to. Lags, what are your thoughts?
I have not taped this matchup at all, so no words from me.
Luke, would you like to expound on it for the people?
Honestly, I didn't even know this was happening until this afternoon. So I have no clue about who this other guy is. So I will defer to your analysis, John.
Perfect. We get to skip the worst fight on the card. Next up, we get Jim Miller against Damon Jackson. I'll start with you here, Lags. Damon Jackson minus 175. Comeback on Miller plus 150. What are your thoughts?
I think the line's about broadly right to me. Like I think Miller, like he could catch Jackson early, but outside of that, I think the pace of Jackson, I think the grappling of Jackson, I think he can take Miller down, stay safe. I think he's got the better cardio of the two. There obviously is a worry with Damon in the striking. I mean, the dude's super hittable. I mean, he's just a noodle, just kind of flailing out there. Jim could certainly crack him, but I think Damon can get takedowns there later this fight goes.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of lean to the price actually being fine. Just because, I mean, I bet both Vince Pichel and Joe Selecki in those fights, and it's like I think there's real potential for that here as well. But at the same time, kind of to what Lag said, just in watching Damon strike, like it's so janky, and he kind of just sticks his head out and like overextends on things, and like. Jim's got a really nasty lead right hook and left hand. He also has pretty nasty leg kicks. Like it's kind of weird with Jackson because there's been quite a few matchups where he realistically like should have died. Like how Chepe didn't finish that last fight, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, Hernandez nearly decapitated him late. Dan Argueta nearly decapitated him late. Like, so he's kind of, even Billy Q had him on the ropes. And so he's kind of zombied his way into like not getting finished a lot too. So it's like, that's like a pro and a con, but I still think the guy's very defensively void. And I think Miller's boxing is pretty good actually. It's just that he doesn't, can't really sustain over the course of an extended fight. So Jackson's 36, so he's definitely not a spring chicken either. But I mean, God, Miller is ancient, and I would trust Jackson's cardio more here. I do actually think the move up to 55 for Damon's probably a good one in the sense that he was cutting 30 pounds to make 45. Like he was saying that he like passed out in his weight cut in the Hernandez fight, and like he's like legitimately like, and he like almost wasn't medic. And because if you remember, he took the Chepe fight on like 2 or 3 weeks notice. This guy had to like cut 30 pounds in 2 to 3 weeks. And I think that actually played somewhat of a factor in that fight too. So, I mean, the guy was just absolutely killing himself to make 45. So he's not going to be undersized at 55 if the guy's walking around at 75 in his frame. So I think that could be a pro and a con in the sense that, maybe he's actually like more durable at 55 in the sense that, he's going to have some more water in his brain, but obviously he's going to be facing bigger hitters at 55 and the guy's getting hurt all the time at 45. So that's a concern as well. But yeah, I side a bit more with Jackson here for just kind of top time blanket wrestling, probably better cardio in the matchup.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw the line with like Jackson at plus like 10 days ago, and I was like, man, that seems like very far off. Like, I know Jim's not a great defensive wrestler, but I was really busy and just didn't have time to tape it. And, when I did look at it, yeah, I kind of had conclude where you guys do, where the line's probably right. Because I do have the aforementioned cardio concerns about Miller. And the fact that, Miller's been taken down and controlled by good grapplers before. My big concern for Jackson and why, I'm not much interested in this juice is, first of all, on the one hand, it's like almost a good thing that most of his takedowns are upper body because Jim's probably not going to jump guillotine and sub him with that. But on the other hand, I don't think Jim's going to be as easy to take down while fresh, from the body lock. I don't think that's something, he doesn't have great hips, but he actually is okay in the clinch. And I think Damon could have some trouble early, which concerns me because, to both of your points, I mean, Miller, at least while he's fresh, is a much better striker. He hits harder. He's faster. He's got way more weapons in his arsenal. I am very, very concerned for Damon Jackson early in this fight. I am. I do think. I think I don't want to. I do think it's probably 50-50 whether or not Miller has like a big moment in round one. I really think it's a high percentage outcome of him having.
He hurt Bobby.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And Bobby is like way more sound defensively and way faster than Damon is. So I look at it, I'm like, man, like with that dynamic, it's really hard to get, I kind of favor Jim to win round one, honestly. And I would favor Damon to win round two moderately, and I'd favor him big to win round three. But it's kind of hard to do business with Damon at minus 175 pre with that dynamic. I'd much rather take like a plus 200 ticket on Damon, or even plus 150 going into round two, down a round, than go in there minus 175 and him either get knocked out or like panic shoot into a guillotine, or early in this fight. I've been on the right side of that with Jim Miller a handful of times. I've also been on the wrong side of it a handful of times. And being on the wrong side is not fun, So
God damn, yeah. Roosevelt Roberts.
But yeah, I mean, look, Damon. I think we all agree Damon has the tools to win this fight, and I think he has way more tools to win an extended fight. I just think the early portion of this fight is going to be sketchy, and I just don't really want to be involved with it pre-fight. Moving on, really interesting fight here, Luke. I'll throw it to you. We got Chris Weidman, the All-American, taking on Eryk Anders. This line has been coming all Weidman's way all week. Current price, Anders minus 115. Come back on Weidman minus 105. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if people took some early Weidman, I think that was fine. Because to me, I think this fight being like a coin flip is fair. Two commodities at this point, I just really don't trust at all, to be honest. I know that Weidman's coming off of having the good performance against Silva, but I mean, Silva's like a corpse at this point. And I mean, we were touting back in the day that Bruno Silva was just never very good at fighting. So,
are we sure he was not always a corpse? Are we 100% positive of that?
Exactly. So we were not Johnny come latelys on the Bruno Silva takes, but I don't know, that the striking to me is kind of weird because I think it's kind of predicated on how Anders is going to fight him. Yeah. Like I think you might have been saying this too, John. So I think we might be on like the same page here. Like, I mean, if Anders is just going to like sit in the mid range with him and like not push forward, like Weidman can probably just poke at him, to be honest. But I do think if like Anders, like he's actually shown a lot more aggression in a lot more of his recent fights, despite being like kind of an inconsistent pace type of guy. But like when he like decides to like bite down and, go forward, he's got power. And I'm still not sold on like Chris Weidman's like durability now being good or something, because he, didn't get knocked out by Silva or Tavares, and Tavares just didn't really push a finish at all. So I think Anders has like more damage equity in this fight, despite getting dropped by Jamie Pickett last time out. I still think in a vacuum, he's the more durable guy and the more heavy-handed guy. So I think part of that's just, how is Anders going to potentially fight him? And then, the ground's kind of interesting too. I mean, Weidman's obviously a far superior, like overall ground talent, but I also think like his entries to takedowns have just looked a lot more labored in recent years. The guy's obviously got a very strong top game, and it's a bit difficult to unsee the Anders and Muniz fight, where Muniz kind of gets his back, and one of the more higher level black belts he fought just kind of ran him in 2 seconds. But I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for Chris to like get takedowns here too, and this might just turn into a gross cage pushy battle. But I mean, in theory, Chris Weidman has like smash ground upside. In theory, I think it just might be a little tricky to get there. So I don't know. I don't really care about the fight, to be honest with you. Except I think early Weidman prices were probably fine, but I mean, I'm not really clamoring to have monetary investment here. What do you guys think about total too? I'm curious about
what is it?
It's probably over 2.5 easily, right?
Yeah,
minus like 200, right? Something like that.
Minus,
I would assume.
Oh, actually, the over's gotten hit. It's minus 230 now, over 2.5.
What's Anders KO? What the fuck? 400?
I mean, it's a weird total though, right? Because like in theory, this fight could just be sucky, boring, and slow, and it's like easy over. But like, given where both guys are at right now, could you also not see a finish realistically here? Like it could also look like free. I mean, what's the comeback look? +2, +190 now? Like,
yeah,
I don't know about steaming the over here. I get where people are coming from, but at this point, I think the under is actually kind of interesting.
I'll be honest. I'm strongly considering betting Anders. I bet Weidman last fight against Bruno. Luke, you touched on it a bunch, but I mean, look at Bruno's history in the time since, and even the fights leading up to that. I mean, I'm not sure what that tells us about it. I'll say this. I think it's kind of bearish that Chris Weidman kind of struggled to grapple Bruno with any success. And then you watch the Nardiev fight and see him just get pretty easily wiped out there. And I think I don't think it's a function of Chris Weidman's now a bad wrestler. I think it's a function of Chris Weidman's had a million injuries and is 40 years old more than anything else. On top of which, I think we all bet him back then during COVID, shortly after the show started against Omari Akhmedov. But you go back to that fight, and that fight was 4 years ago, man. And Chris Weidman was struggling to win the striking with Omari Akhmedov 4 years ago. Now he's 4 years older and he's 40 years old. Like, I know he just outstruck Bruno, but Bruno threw under 100 strikes in that fight. The guy just did not. He really just didn't fight for the entire fight. Weidman, I am like Luke, what you said, that you think the most often scenario here is it could be just tepid, low paced outside. I tend to agree, but like my view on that is, if that is what happens, the worst case is it's a 50-50 type of fight here, in my opinion. Like, Weidman is just not a guy who separates on volume. He never has. It's never been his MO his entire career, really. In that kind of a fight, I know Anders got dropped by Pickett, and it's like I've heard 5 separate people bring that up. To your credit, you did bring it up, but none of those 5 separate people have talked about the 100 times Chris Weidman's been dropped in his career, Like, yeah, Anders got dropped once, and that's what people seem to remember. Like, Chris Weidman, people were talking about as if this guy literally couldn't beat, like a guy at a bar, going into his last fight. And now he's down to pick here. And on the other side of that, I also feel like we've seen Anders in recent years in the Dawkins fight, in the Darren Stewart fight, come out pretty hot, even in the Marc-Andre Barriault fight. And I think if he comes out hot and is trying to work the clinch with Weidman and throw with intent, it's going to be a really tough fight for Weidman, in my opinion. I think at this point in their careers, Anders' athleticism is a lot higher than Weidman. He's probably the much stronger fighter. And honestly, I think he's got better cardio. Weidman's cardio has looked suspect for years. And, last fight was kind of just a gimme because Bruno didn't really do anything. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I think Anders should be some huge favorite here, but I do think Weidman's going to struggle to wrestle him. And I think most iteration of this fight probably could play out near the price. I look at it and I feel like Anders has a lot more big moment upside. I think he's got a lot more critical hit upside and a lot more finish upside than Weidman does. So it's like, even if I think the plurality of fights here are a very close decision, adding that dynamic in, I feel like you got to have Anders at like minus 150 here. So yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to be shocked if Weidman beats him. It's a very winnable fight for Chris. I just kind of think Weidman finally getting his first win in like 5 years or whatever it's been is kind of coloring people's view of the fight and covering some of the liabilities that Weidman, I believe, still has. What do you think, Glags?
Well, you and I talked about this fight a good bit before the pod started, and honestly, the only difference between me and yours take, I think, is that you think Anders has a lot more finishing upside than I think I do. And to me, and again, I guess I would disagree with Luke too. I personally think this fight is like 70, 75% to GTD.
I don't.
That's fair. That's fair.
I was waiting for John to come in.
I know.
We'll see though. Moving on. I have a bet here, and I might end up cashing this out. But we got Jonathan Martinez taking on Marcus McGhee. Current price McGhee minus 130. Come back on Martinez plus 110. I do have 2 units on Martinez plus 120. I am considering cashing it out. My general view and why I made the bet is, I mean, let's be honest. Marcus McGhee, he's looked good in the UFC, but this is a 34-year-old man who's got a full-time job, whose 3 fights in the UFC have been against Journey Newsom, JP Bays, and Gaston Bolanos. Like, it is quite literally the bottom rung of the division. Like, that's it. There's nothing else to say about it. You know, like, this guy has fought the absolute worst guys you could fight in the UFC. And now he's a favorite against the guy in Jonathan Martinez, who's really been fighting just top 20 to 25 guys for the last like 3 or 4 years here now. You know, he's got a win against Said Nurmagomedov. He has a win against Adrian Yanez. He got beaten up by Aldo a bit in his last fight, but I mean, I think we both bet Aldo in that fight, Lags, if I'm not mistaken. And, You know, I can't think of a worse possible matchup for a kicking specialist than Jose Aldo. You know, it was just a horrible, horrible fight for him. So, I mean, this is a titanic step up in competition for Marcus McGhee. Like, it's hard to understate that. And I do think stylistically, it's not an easy fight for McGhee, because even though McGhee goes forward, he's not the kind of guy who's going to press you in a phone booth and fight you. He's very much an in and out type striker. And those kind of guys, like, if you stay inside on Martinez, he can struggle a lot. But if you let this guy get in the kicking range, man, he's going to chew you up. Like, that's his bread and butter. So I actually think stylistically, like, I think Yanez on paper was a tougher fight than McGhee is, because Yanez actually is a guy who will go forward, plant, and swing with you. And he did a pretty good job outmaneuvering him, getting his kicks off, and just honestly owning him. So I think with all of that said, in my head, I'm like, Martinez should probably be favored. It's a huge step up. McGee's not going to stay in his face in the same manner that Aldo did. Like, he should have a chance to get his kicks off. Having said that, the reason I'm kind of having cold feet here is, like, one of the biggest consistent holes in my game betting MMA is taking shots, or not shots, I shouldn't say. It's not really a shot when the line is like this, but betting guys who are giving up, you know, a ton in finishing equity. And I think that's kind of the case here, because unless you think Martinez is going to finish McGhee with leg kicks, it's hard to picture a finish manifesting unless it's like a head kick. And I mean, he could finish him with leg kicks, but let's be honest, leg kicks are inherently high variance. Some guys just eat them and just like they don't even seem to be that bothered or don't mind fighting through the pain, whereas some guys, their legs just go dead. Whereas McGhee, you know, this guy throws hard, you know, he throws with intent, and you know, he picks his shots well and strings combinations together well. And so, like, with that dynamic, it's like, I do think McGee's got a lot more KO equity in this fight than Martinez does. And I sort of think he's got a lot more moment upside. So you really have to think with that dynamic to make Martinez a favorite that he's going to be able to just easily outmaneuver him all fight. And I'm just not so sure, because McGee's movement is pretty good. I do think Martinez is better in the aggregate, but giving the finishing upside dynamic, I don't know. I'm having some questions about it. I'm curious what you guys think. What do you think, Uggs?
Well, I do, to your point there, I do think he has more finishing upside. I do think McGhee can bring a higher pace to the fight as well. And I think he's the more durable guy of the two. So, I mean, I think the line's fine, but I just, to your point as well, I wouldn't bet McGhee in this kind of a spot just because of the titanic step up in competition.
What are your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, this was a tricky one for me, but I actually ended up on your side as well, John. I didn't put 2 units. I think I have a unit on Martinez at plus 122, I think. And it's less about, like, you kind of touched on, you know, the styles and whatnot already, but it's kind of less about that for me, because I think honestly, both guys' styles are really problematic for each other. I know there's a lot of bullish takes in McGhee that he's going to kind of just be able to brood forward and just like kill Martinez. while possible, I think Martinez is getting a little bit disrespected in terms of like how people are talking about like the style of the fight. And people also are saying like Martinez like has no hands. I don't agree with that. Actually,
he's a good boxer.
Yeah, it's like it's obviously not the best part of his game, his kicks and range, but like I think the guy's shown a pretty good jab over the course of his career. I think the problem is that sometimes when things do get chaotic in his fights, that he can make mistakes, and that's an obvious concern here. But I mean, it's a really big step up in terms of like just striking caliber. And one thing I kind of noticed with McGhee too is that he can start to really square his stance when coming into the pocket. And Martinez has some really cheeky check knees right up the middle, kind of like a Yusuf Salal.
That's a good point.
Hurt many guys with that before. That's just a little, interesting nugget of maybe something to look out for in the fight. Martinez is pretty consistent to throw. I mean, he's hurt guys with knees before too, as well. So, I mean, if, McGhee's really coming in and sitting down on stuff, he might, be eating something right up the middle too. So I think Martinez does have some good tools to actually keep McGhee off of him as well. But I mean, a big part of the bet for me is really what you touched on from the start. It's just kind of more of like a market type of bet for me, where, I mean, Martinez closed like minus 170 against Aldo in Brazil last time, where like now he's a dog to a guy with 3 UFC fights who's 34 years old, whose best win is Gaston Bolaños. Like, I don't know. To me, this just seems like everyone's like, fuck Jonathan Martinez, get on the Marcus McGhee train. In a vacuum, I'd like to be on the other side of that, especially
I agree.
At plus money. So like I said, though, I'm a huge fan of McGhee. I like the guy. I cashed on him in his debut at plus against Newson. I cashed on the over in the Bolaños fight. I probably got a little bit lucky in that one, to be honest. But I'm a big fan of Marcus McGhee, like a lot of other people are. But I mean, this is a really big step up of competition, and people are now like, after, like I said, laying juice on him against Aldo in Brazil, are now just like writing him off for dead here. And I don't know. I think it's a little bit disrespectful to Martinez. I do think a competitive line makes sense, but like, I think Martinez's slight favorite is accurate to me.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Moving on. What a line here. I am very curious for thoughts. Luke, I'm going to keep it with you. We got Mauricio Ruffy. He's minus 800. The comeback on James on top, plus 550. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we were chatting about this a bit in the Discord that, this Ruffy guy is going to be a bonfire of money for me. I bet Jamie Malarkey last time out. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I mean, I don't like from a fan perspective, the guy's fun, but from like a fight betting perspective, I don't like fighters with his archetype, low volume snipers that don't wrestle, that have some defensive flaws and have been hurt before. It's just like that type of fighter is going to be drawing on very small margins, or just outright losing if they're not knocking people out. So it's just like, on principle, putting a guy with that style at minus 800 in a UFC fight, I think is just ridiculous. And Llontop obviously is not great. He is kind of a guy that's probably going to be wading into the fire here, and he probably does get knocked out more often than not. But it's kind of interesting that I think Llontop's actually more durable than Malarkey. So I think you can actually make an argument that Llontop could be a trickier matchup than Malarkey was, and he's a plus 550 underdog. Like, Llontop's not a bad technical striker. Like, the guy went strike for strike with Borchev, who's, a top tier kickboxer. Like, he was a bit of a step behind. There's no doubt about it, but he didn't get hurt. And Borchev, he's only one of 2 guys that Borchev hasn't knocked out in his wins. Like, and he was never even remotely hurt in that fight at all. And so I thought he made a pretty decent account of himself there too. So he said he's pretty consistent to throw volume. He's got good cardio. He's got some pop he can build into his fights. He's not like incapable on the ground. I know the Padilla fight isn't like the greatest look, but he's gotten on top of people and controlled position, landed ground and pound before. It's a Ruffy guy. Like I said, he doesn't really wrestle at all. So I don't know. Like I said, I mean, it's just like, if the guy doesn't die here, I mean, this is probably a competitive fight. So it's like at plus 550, it's probably a donation, but it just feels like one I have to make. Like he's probably going to be more active, and he's never been knocked out in his pro career. So I'm probably going to have a sprinkle on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I bet like all the big dogs last week, which obviously didn't go great. Was not fun. So I'm a little shell shocked by the way underdogs have gone this year, to be honest. I saw somebody put a stat out there the other day that like since 2023, underdogs have only won like 33% of their fights in total, and like the ROI is like minus like 5 or 6% on them, like something like that. It's been rough times for people who like betting dogs, but like I'm with you because it's like if you're gonna bet a plus 500, betting on a really durable, high volume guy who goes forward against a low volume guy who might not be that durable, who really hasn't fought much in terms of competition, is probably the kind of spot you want to be on. I'd argue that's kind of probably the spot you want to be on in general. Like when I was looking at this line, I was texting Gambas about it, and I was like, dude, like I think Mauricio Ruffy is a decent talent. You know, he's very technical. He's obviously a sniper with good power, but it's like, unless you think this is like prime Conor McGregor, I don't know how you're getting to this number. You know, like you mentioned it, Luke, but this guy's been hurt by guys with relatively little power regionally. He is low volume. He hasn't really shown much competency in the grappling. Am I going to be shocked if he just is able to just like land clean shots and step off here for 15? No. Will I be shocked if he knocks him out? No. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to go too far into it. You nailed it. Like the margins he's going to be fighting on are tiny here. Unless you think there is some grappling game in his back pocket that he can come out here and lean on, I do not see how you can get him past like minus 250, minus 300 in this fight. Like, and that's like minus 300 for Ruffy here I would be feeling like it's kind of a big line, you know, like this is like minus 850 or 800. This is crazy. Yeah. Shoot.
And one other thing too, that I think is interesting, the total is 1.5 and it's minus 175 to the over.
Right.
So it's like, well, one of these lines is wrong. Probably. Like, I mean, so the fights, we're projecting the fight to extend past the halfway mark, roughly like 63% of the time, but Ruffy's a minus 800 favorite. I don't see how those two add up.
No, and especially to your point that like Llontop does build into fights. Like he tends to get better as fights go on, whereas, you know, I don't know, man. Like Ruffy has not had, like he looked good against Malarkey, but the fight was 3.5 minutes. Like he has not had a comprehensive performance against a decent fighter yet, you know? So I'm very, very skeptical. What do you think, Lags?
I guess I'll be short and sweet here, and I guess I'll be completely opposite of you two. But I mean, yeah, I do think Ruffy knocks him out at a decently high clip. I mean, I guess I'll take the square take on it. I do think Llontop's pretty easy to find on the feet. To your point, to both your points, he is very durable, but I do think Ruffy can land some good shots on him and probably knock him out. Again, to your guys' point about the over, like the total in general in the fight, the under 2.5 is minus 170 as well. So they favor it to go pretty long, but still to get finished in the later half. So that's interesting.
Well, you know what? Go fuck yourself, Lags. How does that sound?
Listen, hey, John, you want to do a 5-to-1 shot?
Yeah, I'll do that. That's good. That could get ugly.
It could.
Deal. I'm in. I'm in for that.
Maybe I'll take like the other 2.5 on that, and I'll come back on Netflix. Just so John doesn't die, and you know.
Oh no, I'm not taking the 5. Lags is the one risking the 5.
Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah,
Llontop. Yeah, so I guess we have an agreement there. If Llontop wins, Luke is coming on next week as another guest and doing the other 2.5.
I'd love to have Luke on as another guest anyway. Fucking
for sure.
Good vibes.
Isn't that
vibes.
Like China card next week? Or
yeah, it's fucking.
Is it really?
It is.
Yeah,
it's 3 a.m. card. Yeah.
Oh,
good
boy.
times. Yeah. Midnight for you. You get to do the Europe thing, Luke. I'm gonna like wake up at like 6 and like watch the rest of it. I am not. My days of waking up at 3 to watch it, or those are a thing of the past.
I might do it. Still spry chicken out here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't have 2 kids that are gonna like just ruin the rest of your day. So,
For sure not.
Anyway, Karine Silva, Viviane Araujo, current price. Silva's a big fave, or a moderate size fave, minus 260. Come back on Araujo, plus 220. Vivi is my favorite bet of the week. I have 2 units on her, plus 225. I'm actually thinking about adding a third. I think the line is like very, very far off, to be honest. Karine, I mean, I bet 4 units on Marina Moroz against her at plus 150. So obviously kind of have to get dabble in size here a bit. But honestly, I think I actually have come to appreciate Karine's game a little bit. You know, very, very dangerous finisher, very good front choke game, decent power in her hands. I just think beyond that, there's not a whole lot of substance there. You know, she's got good physicality. She's got a decent takedown game, but not great in my opinion. She's got terrible gas tank. And when it starts to show, she tends to just basically lose her entire work rate completely. And my 2 biggest concerns with her is that in top position, she's very, very submission over position. Like she's trying to hunt your neck from half guard, which is just a very minus EV way to approach grappling in MMA. And in bottom position, she's got literally nothing. And I look at this fight and yeah, I mean, look, Vivi's 37. She's also got her own cardio issues. She can be a bit hittable, but she's a very good wrestler. She's very, very good on top. She's not very good on bottom. You know, neither of these women are. But in terms of like thinking how it's going to play out, it's like Vivi, she's fought the way higher level of competition. It's a woman who went 5 rounds with Alexa Grasso in the not too recent past. Just won a decision against Jennifer Maia. She's never been finished. I just feel like while they're fresh, it's going to be close on the feet. I give Karine a bit more moment upside early in the fight standing. But I think the grappling is probably going to be the big, like if they strike for 15 minutes, the line is fucking insane, obviously. But I'd give her a little bit of an edge early in the fight. But I think the grappling is really the thing for me because like I think if Vivi gets on top of Karine, she's not going to get up in all likelihood, and she's going to probably get buried for that round. Conversely, I think Karine could hold Vivi down for a round, but Karine's the way she plays submission over position, I think is very, very likely to end up with her at some point in this fight getting reversed to bottom position. And as I mentioned, I have a high degree of confidence that once Vivi gets on top, Karine's not getting back to her feet. So like, I think it's one of those fights where like Vivi could dominate with her own takedowns or just kind of sweep or outposition her to dominant positions off of Karine's takedowns. And while I think they'll both be gassed on the back end of the fight, Vivi fights with like some tenacity while she's tired, whereas Karine just seems to kind of shut down, to be honest. Like round 3 of that Lipsky fight was honestly horrific looking to me. So yeah, I kind of think the fight should be pick'em. And the only reason I don't favor Vivi outright is just the age difference, which is substantial. And Karine's a bit better of a finisher, but I don't really see where Karine has any obvious advantages skill-wise. So, I mean, I like Vivi a lot here. What are your thoughts, Lags?
I think I might be on an island here between the 3 of us here, but yeah, I parlayed up Karine Silva personally, John, minus 250. Okay. Yeah, personally, I think of the 2, I think she's the bigger hitter. I think she has more moment upside of the 2 on the feet. I think in terms of the grappling, I think she is the better grappler of the 2. In terms of the cardio, to your point, I mean, I think it's pretty commensurate. I mean, I do think Karine Silva does have bad cardio, no doubt, but I don't think Araujo is going to take advantage of that the later this fight goes in that 3rd round. I think Karine Silva has most of the finishing upside as well. Yeah, I like her in the spot. Close out a parlay to win a unit.
All right. Well, what do you got? What do you got, Luke?
Yeah, I'll be in the middle. I'm leaving it alone. I've retired from Araujo fights. I'm just done with them. Like it's just been honestly, really both girls. I don't even want to look at my bet MMA and what I've done with both. Like I've tried to fade Karine multiple times, has not worked. I've tried to bet Vivi as a dog 3 or 4 times, doesn't work. Like I just apparently don't. It's not even like I feel like I have a bad read on both the girls. Like Araujo is just so freaking inconsistent. Like I'm just done with her. Honestly, I'm just so done losing money on her. But like to pretty much everything you said, John, I kind of think she's the side at the price because to your point, I don't think there's like any area where you can say that like Karine Silva is commensurately much better than Araujo. I would say probably, I think making her a favorite makes sense probably because I mean, we're dealing with like an 8-year age gap and I think Karine is the better finisher, but to your point, if Araujo gets on top and Karine doesn't guard sub her, like, I mean, Araujo probably just rides out the round on top. And, you know, I think what has Karine been outlanded at distance in like almost every one of her UFC fights so far. So it's just like, it's just one of these type of spots though, where like, I feel like Araujo is a trap. I really get that bad feeling about how these type of fights have been going this year.
I was about to say, would you feel that way if dogs didn't stop winning fights completely?
Yeah, I mean, I guess probably. I mean, with that being said, I'm probably going to have money on like 3 different dogs on this card. I don't know if I'm even going to have any money line favorites, to be honest. But this is one I just like. I get the argument 100%, but I don't think I don't think I can do it. It feels like a massive like plus EV value loser type of fight.
Fair enough. We move on. We got Bo Nickel. He's taking on the Bear Jew, Paul Craig. Current price, Bo Nickel minus 1,200. The comeback on Craig plus 750. Lags. Does Paul Craig have one more giant upset in him here? What do you think?
Honestly, like, I mean, obviously, we talked right before the pod started here that, you know, Bo Nickel, obviously Penn State's own. Big fan of the guy. Hope he does well in the UFC. But, I mean, Paul Craig definitely could, you know, present some issues here. I mean, Nickel's not a great striker. He's got some power, and I think he definitely could finish Craig early on the feet here. But in terms of the grappling, I think it definitely could be sticky for him. I think it could be a lot. I mean, I think there could be a ton of issues here. I get people betting the over 1.5 GTD. Like, I think Nickel finishing him early is going to be a tall task.
What about you, Luke? Actually, yeah, I don't hate like the like a fight starts round 2 or something here. I think that's like I think that's around like even money or something.
Can I interest you in a GTD?
Well, I figured that you'd probably be on that. What's the Nickel decision? It's like something massive, isn't it?
The GTD is 550, so I imagine it's got to be.
So Nickel decision is 9-1.
Yeah, I hate these type of fights. Like, you know, whatever. Paul Craig fights, like it's always just really about picking your poison, your method, you know, kind of what you want to do. You're kind of playing, you know, psychologist and whatnot. Like I said, I guess I'm more interested to hear what your guys' takes are. Like, how do you think Nickel approaches the fight? Like, do you think
I don't think he's going to grapple.
You don't?
No,
think
I don't
so?
think so either.
No, I don't think so.
I kind of disagree. I kind of think he's going to, but I don't.
Don't you think that would be stupid if he does?
What if he just gets into half guard though? Craig's non-existent from half guard.
That's true. That is true.
You don't want to be in his guard. I understand that, but as soon as you get past that, I mean, the guy's terrible. I
just feel like he's so tricky that like he's not even particularly good at jiu-jitsu, you know, but he swivels his hips very fast and he can lock his legs in positions like very fast. And I think like this shouldn't even say deceptively fast, faster than guys who are on top of him expect to happen. And Nickel is like, he's green enough that if he puts himself like his head in like the wrong spot for even a second, he could have a triangle totally locked in, you know, with nowhere to go.
No, I hear that, but I guess my question would be though, if you don't think he's going to wrestle and he's going to strike, like, do you not think there's any equity to just Paul Craig noodling and kicking on the outside in a slow paced gimmick? I don't know. Nickel's still really unproven as a striker.
He's really unproven in MMA.
I'm just saying we have like pretty much when Brundage, like, he swung a couple hammers on him, and I didn't look like Nickel really liked that all that much. I mean, what's the like measurables in this fight? Like, isn't
I was just looking at that too. So it's 6'1" to 6'3", 6'3" being Paul Craig, and they're both at the same reach, 76-inch.
Oh, interesting. I thought Craig would have.
I thought Craig was going to be huger. Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Oh
no, Nickel's a big fucker, man. He's I'll be honest. Like I sort of think Nickel's going to knock him out, but I also can imagine like the Volkan fight playing out here. You know, where it's like I don't personally think Nickel's going to come out wrestling, but I could be wrong. But I do think at some point, like if you recall the Volkan fight, Craig shot like 15 or 16 takedowns. I don't think he got one, but Volkan ended up on top and in half like a few times just from Craig kind of like pulling guard. And I kind of think that's the kind of fight we could be in for, and that's like what a GTD would look like. Because if they stand on the feet, I kind of think Nickel throws with a bit too, like Craig doesn't have enough craft, like ring craft and footwork to, stay on the outside and spam him. And I kind of think once Nickel gets inside and starts unloading, he'll probably hurt him. But I don't think Craig's going to want to do that. And so I just think the question is like, if and when Nickel does end up on top, he strikes me as a smart guy. He strikes me as well coached, as a smart fighter. I don't think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to be going crazy posturing and throwing like tons of ground and pound and risking anything, I mean, look at how he fought Brundage. He was he wasn't concerned with finishing Brundage quickly. He was very, very methodical in how he went through him there. And I kind of expect the same. It's like, the guy like Brendan Allen against Paul Craig. Brendan Allen, you could see, wanted to literally like make Paul Craig stop breathing from top position when he was there. But it's like Brandon Allen's got like 20 years of jiu-jitsu under his belt. He was very, very confident that Paul Craig's not going to sub him. I am not so sure Nickel will be as confident, which I do think lends itself to, GTD and like over a +140. It does kind of fucking annoy me though, that like we've had this like, it seems like all year we get these like super juice guys and the under is like -350. And this time it's like -175, like the under 1.5. Like you can't give us the -350 here with the most high prospect in the history of the sport. But I like over in GTD. Not strong at all. It'll be very, very small on both, but that is where my lean is. What do you think, Lex?
No, the only other thing I was going to add there was that they already have like same game parlays up for on DraftKings. And you could take, I mean, obviously, like we talked about, like the starts round 2 is -105. But if you took, for instance, Nickel and the over 3.5 minutes, -165. 4.5 minutes -4.5 minutes -110.
That's basically like Nickel 2-3, essentially.
It is though, yeah.
What is Nickel 2-3? I'm curious at that.
So I knew we were gonna get deep into the weeds on this.
So Nickel, it's awful. So Nickel 2 is +250 on DraftKings. Round 3 is 6-1.
That's not that awful.
So
what? I literally just said like over in GTD, and now I'm sitting here talking about betting Nickel 2.
So you said it's what, 230 and 600?
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah. 250. Sorry, 250. 250 and 600. Sorry.
250 and 600. So if you Dutch that, what does that come out to? 6.
We're coming up with a Dutch parlay.
Like +132.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's I guess a little bit better, but it's close to the starts round 2.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the starts round 2. That sounds way better.
Same. Or even that same game part. I mean, starts round 2 is even better than that same game.
Or just play GTD. There's nothing like a sweat between one of the most finishable guys in the UFC against one of the best finishers in the UFC.
Yeah, dude, Nickel's just gonna fly across the cage and just decapitate him in 5 seconds. I'm like, I laid -105 on this. I'm a fucking idiot.
Right.
I played Woodburn over GTD, and it was just like, well, okay. I'm glad I just lit that on fire.
Did you play the over in the Brundage fight?
No, I didn't. Sickening. Really.
I know. I think a lot of people played that from what I remember.
I just like with that fight, it's like Brundage is just so happy to like
quit,
pack up tent, but close the tent and like and go home.
He actually showed more heart in that fight than he has in like almost
any fight in his career. Yeah, Cody Brundage. I mean, he is never stop being you. Anyway, co-main event. We got a rematch. Charles Dubronx Oliveira taking on poor Michael Chandler, who has sat out for basically 3 years trying to get his Conor McGregor fight. That has not materialized. Current price here. We got Oliveira -240, comeback on Chandler +205. Luke, do you think there's a side here? Do you have anything you're interested in?
Honestly, I think it's actually a little high just because you know how Chandler sits there and causes chaos, but obviously given the first fight, he nearly, killed Oliveira. But I don't know. The problem I've always had with Chandler is like, he just, ever since he came to the UFC, the guy just has like no process to his game, like whatsoever. Like, he's just like trying to, like, I just want to go out here and have fun fights. It's like, I mean, God bless him. All of his fights have been super fun. Just like analytically, I just think there's like, the guy's just kind of a meathead. And he's like, I felt like if he's put together some more intelligent game plans in a handful of these fights, he honestly could have arguably potentially won them. Yeah, I think making Charles the favorite makes sense. I think he's more dangerous, and I don't have super in-depth breakdown. I think he's more dangerous in both realms. I think he's got better recoverability, better ring craft, but I mean, Oliveira gets hurt all the time, as we know. So it's like laying minus 240, you know, am I like running to the window to do that when, I mean, Chandler could bonk? Maybe a better like live entry. I was looking at the total too. It's 1.5, which is like evens. And I think that's probably fine because I kind of lean the fight to like probably end in round 2. And then you're kind of guessing about the times. I don't know.
I actually kind of like the under, to be honest. I don't love it.
Same.
It's like, I just feel like, I mean, this is going to be a car crash from the first minute, you know, that's just how they fight. And I don't think even if Chandler wants to default to wrestling, he can really stay safe with Charles for too long. In terms of the fight itself, I mean, yeah, I have pretty much the same feelings as you, Luke. I guess I think there's probably slight value on Charles, but like I'm not with his style, I would never advocate to lay this juice. I just feel like Chandler is so front-loaded, and Charles has actually shown a bit more heart and cardio and ability to finish fights later these days. That like if Chandler doesn't get a finish in the first 5 minutes, I have a hard time picturing him winning the fight. I'm not saying it's impossible, but just like a tough time seeing it. Like I think Charles should be about minus 300, but I'm not going to bet it. I'm interested in the under. I might play it. It looks like money has come in on the over. So if that continues to happen, I will dabble in the under. I just feel like I think Charles is going to finish him quickly, but you're a pussy if you don't bet Michael. I did bet Charles in their first fight, like minus 130. That was pretty
and Trump's
nice.
going to be in attendance, so
Trump is going to be
It's a narrative nation.
Is he in New York? Oh yeah, I guess he's from New York.
Yeah, come on.
That makes sense.
Especially after winning that.
It is true. I'm extremely interested to hear what the crowd reaction is going to be, since like New York City, obviously, very, very liberal place, but obviously MMA, not the most liberal community ever.
They'll probably block the crowd noise down if people start going.
It's true. I am. That's awesome though. I mean, that'll be fun. And Michael Chandler there for him. I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Chandler win. I just have no interest in him. I'm interested in the under. What do you think, Lags? You like a total aside? Any thoughts here?
I do like a total. So 3.5 years ago, I had the under 2.5 rounds at minus 140. And now 3.5 years later, I'm also playing the under 2.5 rounds to close out that parlay with Silva at minus 250. I think the under is, I still think at minus 250, I think it's a great spot for a total, for a parlay for the spot. I see, like you had mentioned, I think this is a car crash right from the jump. I think both of these guys are super volatile. I see a finish very early in this fight at a high clip. I like it. Closes out the parlay at minus 109.
All right.
Where'd you play that at, Legs? The
DraftKings. Yep.
Yes. Trump's like America parlay from Pepe, John Jones, Mike Chandler, and Bo Nickel. That is tremendous. Moving on, though. Speaking of John Jones, we got the GOAT, John Bone Jones, taking on the heavyweight GOAT, Stipe Miocic. Current price, John Jones, huge favorite, minus 650. Comeback on Miocic, plus 475. Pretty annoying because I had max bet Jones when this was first booked 2 years ago, or a year ago, I guess. And I had like minus 260 on him.
Wild.
It's just like, like even when this reopened, it opened at like 450, and it just like, fuck me, you know? But like I feel it's kind of funny. Like everybody kind of knows the drill. I don't think I need to go like too deep into an analysis with this fight, but I feel like you can't. Obviously, the known narrative here is you can't do business with Stipe because it's been almost 4 years and he's 42 years old. And I don't really dispute that. There's so much downside at his age, you know, and him just being total dust. What I don't think is getting enough talk is that like John Jones is 38, who hasn't fought in 2 years and coming off a major injury for a 38-year-old man. I think there is a pretty strong chance he could show up looking like total dog shit as well in this fight. So I don't know. I agree that there's more downside on the Stipe side at his age, 4 years off, but I think there's like a pretty considerable amount of downside on the Jones side. With all that said, what I like here is the over. The truth is, Stipe's whole career, the guy comes from a wrestling background. He's never been a guy, even Cormier got him down, and Cormier controlled him a bit, but he didn't really get close to doing any like big damage. And obviously Cormier had a very, very strong top game, like one of the best in the sport. And, maybe he's old enough that if Jones gets him down once, Jones is just going to get on top and rip through him. But I don't know. I kind of doubt it. Obviously it can happen, but I just feel like that's the kind of one of those variables that it's like, what probability can you assign that? I don't think like super, super high. I kind of think if Jones wrestles, he's going to spend a lot of time controlling him on top, maybe doing damage here or there, but not finishing him. And on the feet, I don't know. I mean, John, maybe Stipe's chin's just dust and John knocks him out, but like John's never been a guy with like big power in his hands. I mean, people forget, but this guy dragged Thiago Santos with 2 torn ACLs to a 5-round decision. He dragged Anthony Smith to a decision. Like John Jones just is not a guy with a lot of pop. Most of his big moves on the feet are like elbows and knees. It's not like hurting guys with your hands. Stipe, I suppose, could hurt him, but I Jones's defense, he's so long and he's so hard to get inside on. I just don't really see it. I don't know. I look at the fight and I feel like the over 2.5 should be like 7, like honestly, like 65 or 70%, like not plus money. And I think the GTD should be like pick them to minus 150, not plus 350. Like, am I going to go max those? No, because like obviously if it turns out one or both or just Stipe are totally done, then that entire analysis is wrong and it's like the prices are right. But I think that's like your worst case scenario is the prices are right. Whereas there is a lot of scope for the prices being very, very wrong. And this cruising to a low volume standard John Jones 25-minute 50-45 where you cash an easy plus 400 here. So yeah, I like the over 2.5 plus 115. I like the goes the distance at around plus 400. Lags, what do you think?
Honestly, I don't have much interest in the fight as a whole in general. Honestly, first glance,
Jones.
It is, but first glance, I was looking at this. Not that I was completely opposite of you, but I was like, under could be interesting. Jones could, John obviously could finish him on the mat. But to me, outside of that, where's the under coming from? So I'm fine easily passing. I mean, I think this probably is a ho-hum John decision, but yeah, just not much interest from me.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Lags as well. I don't have much interest. Honestly, I'm a bit, I guess, kind of the other way though. I'd probably actually maybe look more towards the under just because I feel like I just have a feeling Stipe is going to show up looking like absolute shit here.
He does look good though, at least shape wise.
What's that?
Photo shoots and what I said, at least from the photo shoots and whatnot, he does look like he's in solid shape. But I understand.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
The ring rust.
I'm saying more just in terms of like fighting form. I don't know. That's kind of how I'm more so leaning. So I would actually probably lean a little bit more towards the under, but I understand what you're saying, like from a pure X's and O's standpoint, why the over is interesting, but it's just kind of one of those fights where my gut feeling is like Stipe just looks terrible and John finishes him in 2 rounds, honestly.
Did you know John Jones has 1 knockdown in the last 11 years?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so, but Stipe also nearly died in his
yeah, that is true.
42 years old at heavyweight. But to your point, I do think it's interesting though that I don't think the whole narrative thing is like one way towards, Stipe potentially looking bad to everything you said. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding Jones's just general form here at heavyweight too, in terms of what it means and speed, cardio, durability, those type of things. So.
I'm here for that. What Pepe said there in the chat. I'm here for that.
But yeah, I mean, that'll do it. Big shout out to our boy Luke coming out here for our 200th episode. Lags is going to twist up a little contest that we're going to do a giveaway for it, out on Twitter. We can do the same one as last time if you want. That seems to be a pretty good one. Yeah,
we could do it.
Luke, real quick though, tell them where to find you. Tell them about what you're doing right now, where they can read your shit.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Definitely happy to come back on in the future for sure. We'll have to set up another like Apex event or maybe go somewhere close because that was super fun. We all got
You know what we might need to do with you, Luke? You know how Rogan only does domestic pay-per-views? You know, maybe we only have you do domestic pay-per. We come on for every domestic pay-per-view.
I'll have my agent contact the people. We'll get the contract. But no, yeah, love talking to you guys as always. Yeah, you can check me out sparringwithreality.com. That's where I put up all my bets and content, and then I do some of the matchup analysis for Brett Apley and the Establish the Run MMA DFS product over there.
Yeah, and as usual, guys, you can find me out, John, on MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. We'll be back next week talking a 3 a.m. absolute dog shit UFC Macau card. It's going to be electric. Good luck on your bets this weekend, unless you're fading us, in which case, go fuck yourself. But I hope we all make money. Peace, everybody. Thanks again, Luke.